Welcome to Winning Retirement Television. My name is Cynthia DeFazio, and I'm joined today by Greg and Kristen Taylor of Legacy Retirement Group. And to our viewers at home, today's show is all about 401ks. You know, back in 1980, the 401k replaced the pension, but the thing is, a lot of people don't understand even how their 401ks are allocated, and how do we understand that very confusing maze of the 401k? Kristen, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Fantastic. Always a pleasure to see you. You look beautiful and
You as
navy.
well.
Oh, thank you. Greg, how are you? You look dapper.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm doing great. Looking forward to today's show.
I am too, because obviously, as I mentioned when we were doing the opening to the viewers at home, the 401k obviously replaced the pension back in 1980, but so many people are confused about what's even in their 401k. How is it allocated? How do they maximize it? So let's just talk all about the 401k today. Greg, let's start with you.
Oh, for sure. I mean, having to make those decisions for those that actually have a pension, you know, that's a big decision. You know, how do I take my pension? Do I take a single life annuity?
Yep.
Do I take a joint life annuity with my spouse to make sure that they're protected? Do I take the lump sum if that's available? And so there's a lot of questions behind those who actually do have pensions, but those who don't have pensions perhaps took advantage of things like a 401k. And hopefully they did, because, you know, most employers are providing a match to your contributions. Not all, but most do. And so we've always encouraged people to put in at least enough to get the free money.
Okay.
And so many times when you start working, you're doing that, and they're generally low fees within them. And, you know, you can easily just put money in, your dollar cost averaging out of each check. So even though it's going up and down, you're kind of moving along steady. And I think as you start to approach those retirement years, that's where you're like, oh, wait a minute, what am I actually invested in? You know, or things like the pandemic happened and those 401ks went all over the place, and you're thinking, okay, there's a little more risk in there than I expected there to be, or I'm not seeing as much bounce back because there's not enough growth in there that I expect there to be. So that's where the questions start coming up, don't you think, Greg?
Oh, for sure. And I still remember the common theme right after the 2008, you know, housing bubble, that crash where the market just really took a dive.
Yes.
So many people would come in and they would say that their 401k had become a 201k because they'd lost nearly half of what they had. And, you know,
and all they could do was kind of laugh as they said it. I remember it too.
Yes, and they weren't, inside they weren't laughing because they were devastated.
Yeah.
Sure.
And how people handled that really determined where they went from there. As far as some people just were scared to death, pulled everything out of their investments and went to cash, and they locked in those losses for a long period of time. Others, they asked for some help, and they were able to navigate through, and those that stayed the course were happy that they did, because in coming years, in 2010 and 11 and 12 and 13, we saw the market bounce back and people being able to recover those losses. But, you know, there was a period of time from 2000 to roughly 2012, and they call it the lost decade.
Okay.
Because if you look at where the S&P 500 was at the beginning of the year 2000, it took up until about 2012, if people were buying and holding that entire time, for them to actually make a profit. It went down, it came back up, and then 2008 happened, and it went down, and it came back up. And that's so discouraging.
Absolutely.
Several years ago, Kristen and I got to go to Maui for a few days, and we were able to stay at this beautiful hotel. And just, you know, on the outskirts of the hotel was a little cove, a little inlet that came in, and there was lots of rocks and things there, and the water coming in. And Kristen and I were up sitting on one of those rocks, and there was this huge sea turtle. Remember that?
Aww.
Yeah, you said several years ago. Gosh, this was over 10 years ago, I think.
It's been a while.
Yeah. I'm thinking, when did we go there last?
It's been a while.
Okay, go ahead, continue.
So this huge sea turtle's there.
Beautiful.
I mean, it's probably half the diameter of this desk here.
Yeah.
It was huge.
Wow.
And we sat there. I mean, you know, I can be entertained easily. So I'm sitting there for about an hour watching this thing, and it would it would try swimming out of this cove, and about the time it would just about get out of the cove, another wave would come in and push it all the way back in.
Oh.
And it would start swimming again and get all the way there, and then next thing they know, another wave pushed it back in. And I sort of feel like that's how people felt during that time with their investments.
Yeah.
You think, man, I'm finally making back the money I lost, and then boom, 2008 happens. Then you finally get back up to where you were, and then boom, 2018, we had a huge market decline, and then, okay, I'm making money in 2019, and 2020, the pandemic happens, and then we just get back up above water in 2021, and then 2022, stocks and bonds both go down, and so that market up and down and navigating that can seem insurmountable sometimes. It can be discouraging, and I can understand why people would almost throw their hands up and say, what in the world do I do
Absolutely.
with my money? And that's especially true with 401ks, because we don't typically get a lot of help when it comes to how to manage it.
Well, and that's why I think it's important to point out as well that so many people working today haven't worked at one job their entire life. And so they have those, we call them orphan 401k accounts.
Sure.
And you can do something about that. I think you started out by asking, you know, what can we do?
Yeah.
And so you may not, you want to go ahead and contribute to that match. We always suggest that. That's free money. But if you have old 401k accounts, it might be time to look at rolling those over into an IRA so that you can get additional help and have more options for investing and be more efficient so that you can be the beneficiary of good planning versus worry about the timing within those.
For sure.
Makes sense.
And a common theme of those that are coming in with 401k accounts, Cynthia, is the majority of them we're seeing are just in what we would call a target date fund.
Okay.
Because they're unsure what to do, they're putting it in the 2020 fund or the 2025 fund or the 2030 fund, and those are called target date funds. And so depending on the year, so for instance, a 2050 fund would be almost all invested in stocks, whereas a 2020 fund would be invested about half in stocks and about half in bonds. And so that's the shorter the time frame, the more conservative it becomes. But the majority of people have no idea what they're actually invested in or how much risk they're actually taking. That's where having a 401k X-ray is huge.
Absolutely.
Understanding the risk return, understanding whether or not those things they're in actually are in line for their goals. Do you need income? How soon are you going to need income? How much growth are you looking for? How much risk are you comfortable with? All those things we take into account when we do that 401k X-ray.
Well, this is the perfect time for us to take a commercial break, Greg and Kristen. To our viewers at home, there's a number to call on your screen, 614-336-7660. If you're in the viewing audience today and you yourself have a 401k and you're unsure of how it's allocated, you're unsure of how much risk you're actually taking within that 401k, this is the perfect opportunity for you to call in and take advantage of the 401k X-ray. Let Greg and Kristen take a deep dive into what you currently have in place. And if you're trying to plan how the 401k will suit your retirement needs, this is the perfect opportunity to take advantage of this offer today. And again, the number is 614-336-7660. If you have your smartphone handy, go ahead, grab it, click on that QR code at the bottom corner of your screen. That will take you right to Legacy Retirement Group's landing page. You can schedule your time with Greg and Kristen there accordingly. We know that you have a lot of questions about your 401k. You're being offered the 401k X-ray today, and all you have to do is take action. Pick up the phone and call in, 614-336-7660. We're going to take a very short commercial break. Don't go anywhere. I have so much more with Greg and Kristen when we return.
The work never seems to end until the day it finally does. After nearly a lifetime on the job, you should be rewarded for all the time you spent working. Whether that's crossing off items on your bucket list, learning a new passion, or rekindling the love of an old one. After all, life isn't over when you stop working. It's the start of an all-new chapter, the one where you're the writer and you get to choose how your story will go. A way to achieve that is by having a clear financial plan to sustain your golden years. The biggest fear most retirees have is if they'll have enough money to maintain the lifestyle they've always enjoyed. Having a plan to help protect you against the curveballs life often throws will help to maintain your lifestyle. Call today to get your free written financial plan so you may live every day to the fullest and enjoy the retirement of your dreams.
Welcome back to Winning Retirement Television. My name is Cynthia DeFazio. I'm joined today by Greg and Kristen Taylor of Legacy Retirement Group. And this is such an amazingly interesting show talking about the 401k. And a lot of people have no idea how it's even allocated or if they're taking too much risk. We have a viewer question that I think is very timely to throw into today's show. Do you mind if we tackle that?
Oh, sure.
All right. It says, I am 59 and my wife is 56. We both plan to retire in 6 years. We are currently earning a combined income of $190,000 per year. Does it make sense to change my 401k allocation to the Roth option? Greg, I know you're a fan of the Roth. Let's talk about that.
I am a fan of the Roth, and $190,000 a year, you're still within the 22% tax bracket. In fact, we can earn over $365,000 and still be within the 24% tax bracket. So I'm a fan. I'm a fan of going ahead and paying Uncle Sam now because we're still in what I would call a discounted tax environment based on historic data. So we want to make sure that we take advantage of today's tax rates.
Okay.
So, and right now, if you're over the age of 50, you can put up to $30,000 into that Roth 401k.
Wow. Okay.
And by the way, we're talking about 401k today, Cynthia. But, we work with a lot of state of Ohio employees who have 403Bs.
Okay.
They don't have 401ks. Or they have 457 deferred compensation plans. And so those are, again, tax deferred retirement plans. So they would kind of fit in the same category.
Okay.
And we do see occasionally a Roth 403B. So there's the Roth 401k. There is the Roth IRA. And so anyone that's within that tax category that has options to put money in a Roth, I'm all for that as long as we don't get above the 24% tax bracket.
Right, and
Okay.
all the while maintaining understanding that your budget may change a little because now you don't have that deduction. So making sure that your budget can handle those additional costs, which in general, people aren't going to miss those dollars. In general, they're not, but making sure that you can afford to do that.
Okay.
For sure. And, we have to start thinking about what's going to happen in 2026 and beyond, because what we call today the Trump tax cuts, they're set to expire at the end of 2025. Now, I don't know what 2026 looks like, but I still believe in that old theory of boiling a frog in water. I'm not trying to, be mean about frogs. My boys love frogs. But if you put a frog in a pot of boiling water, it's going to jump right out. However, if you put it in a pot of water and you turn on the heat and it slowly increases, that frog will stay right where it's at until it boils, and then it will boil the frog.
Viewers, do not try this at home. We love frogs. Do not try this at home.
You're giving
Just want to put that
anxiety.
disclaimer out there.
I know. We have pictures of Kristen when the boys were little with tree frogs on her hands.
No,
and-
not tree frogs. You caught that huge bullfrog.
Oh, yes.
Remember that?
Aw,
Yes.
Frogs are awesome. Okay, let's go back.
Yes. Well, I believe that's the way the government's going to treat us with taxes. It will, first, the Trump tax cuts will just expire. It will go back to the previous tax rates, which in that case, the 12% bracket would go up to 15%. Do you realize that within itself is over a 20% increase?
Wow. 20%, over 20%.
Over 20%.
Increase.
The 22% tax bracket would then become 25%.
Wow.
And as we go, each and every bracket begins to change slightly.
Yeah.
And those are tax increases that would happen just by the expiration of the Trump tax cuts. Then I would expect taxes to raise slightly in a few years above that. And then raise slightly in a few years above that. And the next thing you know, we could go from the 12% tax bracket up to a 25% tax bracket within that same income level. That's not out of the realm of possibility. In fact, David Walker, who used to be the Comptroller General for the United States under President Clinton and also under President Bush, he said, when asked by Congress, what is it going to take to maintain Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, he said the 10% bracket would have to raise to 25%, At that point, the 39.6% bracket, he said, would have to raise to 65%.
Can you imagine?
No, I cannot.
But those rates are historically in line with what's happened in the past. In the 1940s, there was a 94% tax bracket for those who made over $200,000 per year.
Wow.
So these are things that have happened in the past, and you know, the past sometimes has a way of doing what?
Repeating itself.
Repeating itself. So if that happens, are we prepared to face those taxes?
And along with that, the future taxes are legislative risks as well.
Yes.
Because the rules can change so often and very quickly. We saw that with just Social Security claiming strategies changes that have happened, or RMD, required minimum distribution, the ages started changing. And so as we move forward and start planning for our retirement, we need to consider that as a possibility and take advantage of what we have to take advantage of now.
Sure.
Because we don't know if it'll be in place later on.
You know, Kristen, we had someone go to the testmyretirement.com on our landing page there, and they requested the RMD report.
Okay.
Now, they were both age 60. They came in probably about a month ago, and they'd saved just under $1 million between their 401ks and 403bs. So we looked at it and we plugged in what they felt like was a fair average rate of return, and we just plugged in today's tax rates, and we showed them what their required distribution could potentially look like at age 75, because that would be the age for them.
Okay.
And it was astounding. Nearly $100,000 a year required minimum distribution.
Wow.
At that point. This is huge. So I said, would you rather start doing conversions of $100,000 a year now and paying today's tax rates, or would you rather trust Uncle Sam and see what the tax rates could look like in the future when you're required by law to take that money out? So you want to do it on your terms, or do you trust Uncle Sam enough to do it on their terms?
That should be an easy answer. Absolutely. Well, this is the perfect time for us to take a commercial break. To the viewers at home, if you're sitting in the viewing audience today and you're wondering, wow, what's going to happen when these tax trump cuts sunset in 2025? What does 2026 and beyond look like? Why not take advantage of the RMD report? Have a look at what you currently have in place. How could it change if the tax laws change? What about legislative risk? We have to talk about that as well. All of these things are going to impact your retirement. Will you be ready? You have to do one thing today, and it's very simple. Just pick up the phone and call in. You must take action. 614-336-7660. We know you have a lot of questions for Greg and Kristen about how to plan your perfect retirement. What happens with all of these things that could change and sunset? How will that impact your overall income? What about RMDs? Don't miss the RMD report. If you have your smartphone handy, go ahead, grab a click on that QR code at the bottom corner of your screen. That will take you right to Greg and Kristen's landing page at Legacy Retirement Group. We want to see you there. Take a very short commercial break in just a moment. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. We have so much more about taxes and how you should be planning properly when we return.
Living a life is building a legacy. A legacy of milestones. Your first home. Raising your children. Becoming grandparents. And memories. From the first steps across the living room floor to the walk down the aisle. At every stage, your family is the most important part of your life, and you want to protect them, now and in the future. Which is why the decisions you make today are so important. You've worked hard to provide a better life for your loved ones. Now is the time to make sure that lasts. Build a legacy that will influence generations to come. Plan smart. Retire well with Legacy Retirement Group.
Welcome back to Winning Retirement Television. My name is Cynthia DeFazio. I'm joined today by Greg and Kristen Taylor of Legacy Retirement Group. And what an amazing show we're having today, talking about such important topics. Obviously, 401ks, pensions, RMDs, tax changes, legislative risk. We now have a viewer question. We know people are in the audience today and they're thinking about a lot of different things, but they have a question they want to ask you. It says, Greg and Kristen, I am 64 and my wife is 63. We plan to retire in 2 years. We have saved a combined $1.2 million in our 401k accounts and another $250,000 in other investments. How much should we have invested in stocks at this point in our lives?
Well, first of all, that's a great question, and good job on saving over $1 million for your retirement. But I think what we end up doing is plugging in calculators a lot of times and looking at rules of thumb. So the old rule of 100 would be the answer there in most cases of, you know, you take your 8 or take 100, subtract your age, and that's about how much you should have in stocks. But we think it goes a lot further than that when you're trying to decide what you should have in stocks. Because think about it, if you're 60 years old and you go by that rule and you have no risk tolerance at all, you can't stomach thinking about losing 20% in the market. Does it feel really good to put 40% of your assets in the market?
Absolutely not.
It doesn't.
No.
So there's so many things. It's kind of like as we go through this technology age we're in and we're looking at artificial intelligence, AI, everything's about AI. And so we start seeing all this robo-investing and things of that nature. That's where the mark gets missed, I think, because there's so much human interaction needed to properly plan for comfortability. So maybe what you have in the market doesn't make sense from a rule of thumb aspect, but it makes sense for your comfort and for your attitude of sleeping well at night, right? Your peace of mind. So we like to subscribe to the principle of no investment decision is made outside of the context of the plan. Right? So the plan determines where we're invested.
For sure. And on the flip side of that, Kristen, let's say someone comes in and they've got great pensions, they've got nice Social Security, they don't have an income need, but they have a desire for more growth. They can afford to take on risk to invest in the stock market. So they might want more than 40% invested in equities or stocks. And risk really has to be supported by a couple of different pillars. One is our tolerance or the ability to stomach risk. The other one is our ability or our capacity to afford risk. And you really need both. You need the capacity to withstand it and afford it. You need the tolerance to be able to stomach it. And if you have both of those things, then it's not necessarily wrong to maybe have 60 or 70% in equities, or even more depending on what someone's true goals are for the long term. And your time horizon really has a lot to do with it as well. You know, if you're 90 years old, you may not have as long a time horizon as someone who retires at 60 or 65.
But it also depends on what it is you're trying to accomplish with those dollars as well, right?
It does.
So I'm thinking we have clients who have no children and they're more interested in the money they're going to leave behind to their charities than anything else. Right? So understanding what those dollars need to do for you is important.
Yes, and we're working currently with a family that they had purchased some stocks that their cost basis is really low. And they're in their 80s now. But these stocks have grown exponentially to where, you know, they've got a cost basis of a couple $100,000, but they've got over $2 million in these stocks. Well, if they just continue to invest in these stocks and they pass these stocks on to their heirs, then their heirs could then sell them at the appreciated value without tax. That's called a step up in basis. So in their case, they have no intention of selling these stocks off even at their higher age because they are concerned about taxes. And they're not in retirement accounts, so they would have to pay capital gains taxes on these non-qualified accounts if they were to sell the positions.
So even though there's volatility within them, the amount of tax that would be owed kind of offsets that.
So there's more than just one answer when it comes to how much you should have in stocks. So we want people to have enough money in their, what we would call their sleep well at night money, to handle needs and wants and emergencies and planned purchases. We want people to have enough in what we would call their income strategy to take care of any income needs during their retirement. And then what's in growth, it's really going to be based on what someone's risk score is. Someone could have a risk score between 1 and 99. If you're 1, you probably shouldn't be in the market at all. If you're at 99, you have a high tolerance for volatility. Now, we've never had anybody score a 1. We've never had anyone score a 99. But if you score, say, a 55, that means that you have a tolerance for a little bit more volatility than someone that scores a 30.
Okay.
And so we can adjust and plan out a portfolio based on that score. So it becomes customized to your unique individual tolerance and desire for risk.
And that score is determined by the way people answer questions during the planning review. Greg, help me understand.
It is. I call it the financial eye test.
Okay.
Because I'm going to ask them a series of questions based on how much volatility is in the plan. And I'm going to say, which looks better to you, this one or that one? They'll give me the answer. I'll say, this one or this one. It's like
Sounds
when I go to the
familiar, right?
optometrist, right?
It does.
It's like that financial eye test. And then once we've gone through that session, it gives us our risk score.
Are people often surprised by their risk score?
Yes.
They are.
And it's funny, I've sat in appointments where, they almost are afraid to have a wrong answer, if you will.
Yes.
Well, I think it should be this, but I think it's more like this one. And Greg's like, I can't answer it for you. You have to just tell me what you think. It's kind of funny watching the process.
Yes. And sometimes folks will ask, well, how is our risk score compared to others? And one thing I want
that comparison,
I let them know
sure. That's
that
interesting.
doesn't matter. All that matters is how you feel. And that is so unique here, because oftentimes we get these industry words like conservative, moderate, growth, aggressive. Well, what in the world does that even mean?
Yeah, it's true.
Aggressive for one person might mean that I'm no longer in a CD, so now I'm aggressive.
Right.
Right? I've got some money in the market, I'm aggressive. Others might be, I want all my money in tech stocks. Well, that means, you're in that 90-some range.
Yes.
Okay? We just want people to be in the right spot for them.
Greg, thank you so much. Kristen, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, the number to call is 614-336-7660. Do you know your risk tolerance? You probably want to come in for that complete planning review. See where you stand. Are you currently in the right position to retire? And if not, wouldn't you want to know today? Pick up your smartphone, click on that QR code. That will take you right to the landing page for Legacy Retirement Group. Be safe, be happy, and be blessed. We'll see you back 1 week from today. Take care now.